On the 3rd of December 2023, famous YouTuber HBomberGuy posted a video that would send shockwaves throughout the entire YouTube community. In his almost 4-hour-long video titled Plagiarism and YouTube, he would go on to expose several prominent YouTubers for plagiarizing their entire scripts from outside sources without crediting them at all. Some of these YouTubers were let off lightly, given the chance to bounce back from these allegations after learning their lesson, while others were forced to vanish from the YouTube scene completely and delete their entire online presence. Hi, I'm the Internet Anarchist. I create weekly YouTube documentaries, and today we're diving into what happened when one of YouTube's most intense watchdogs, HBomberGuy, a figure infamous for dissecting creators with relentless scrutiny, released an expose targeting plagiarism across the platform. Now, a year later, we're looking back at the fallout and lasting impact on the creators involved, starting with one of the most infamous content stealers on YouTube, Illuminati. If you've been following my channel for more than 6 months, you know I've had my fair share of issues with Illuminati, aka Blair Zon. I've called her out multiple times, exposing her for predatory behavior towards minors, censoring other creators to maintain her reputation, and even manipulating her own employee. But she wasn't always as hated as she is today. At her peak, Illuminati was a documentary-style content creator who created long-form video essays focused on exposing businesses for their pyramid schemes and unethical marketing practices. Her channel rose in popularity almost overnight, with subscribers flocking to her channel. This was mostly because of how quickly she was pumping out long, detailed video essays, which is quite ironic considering her speed at pumping out videos was what attracted HBomberGuy's attention to her in the first place. It all started back in 2021 when he watched her anti-vax documentary series as part of his own research for his video titled Vaccines and Autism: A Measured Response.
In 2021, when I was working on the Vaccines and Autism video, so out of curiosity I put on other videos on the topic. One of them was by a channel called Illuminati, whose real name is Blair Zon. I hadn't heard of her before. She seems to do videos covering multi-level marketing schemes, pyramid schemes, and failed businesses, stuff like that. And she seems to make a lot of them really quickly. I wonder how.
Both videos were about the same incident regarding disgruntled UK doctor Andrew Wakefield, and his research, unlike her, had always been quite detailed. So when he heard a quote in her doc that sounded weirdly familiar, he decided to investigate.
And at one point, I did a double take.
There was a joint inventor on these products, a man named Hugh Freudenberg, a former immunologist who has been long controversial. In 1989, he was caught up in a bizarre lawsuit with the Food and Drug Administration, which told him he had to stop injecting his autistic patients with blood products.
I remember pausing, budget B&Q hammer in hand, and thinking, haven't I heard this exact sentence before?
As it turned out, both HBomber and Illuminati had used the same source for their research. Award-winning journalist Brian Deer's 2004 documentary, MMR What They Didn't Tell You, which was released on YouTube for free. But unlike HBomber, who credits him as the original source multiple times, Blair only mentions him once at the start of her video.
But I watched the video properly and noticed she does acknowledge Brian Deer and the documentary pretty openly.
In 2004, Brian Deer came out with a documentary entitled MMR What They Didn't Tell You,
and also includes a variety of quotes from other influential people from his documentary without crediting him at all, as if to pass off his interviews with these people as her own.
Blair, for some reason, doesn't cite her sources. Here's a part where she quotes Andrew Wakefield.
Wakefield also stated, mumps, measles, and rubella together might be too much for the immune system of some children to handle.
I love there's a tiny Andy there for some reason, but not saying where he said this is pretty bad citation. But this isn't a mistake. Blair is hiding the source on purpose for a reason. You see, this quote is from the same documentary again.
As soon as he realized Illuminati was trying to pass off Deer's work as her own, he decided to make her his next victim. In his plagiarism video, he called her out for blatantly plagiarizing entire academic studies.
This is a really common trick with lazy creators. Go on Wikipedia and quote all of their sources, and then it looks like you did a bunch of research and work. And to make it even better, she pretends she had to look for this stuff.
Other studies have suggested there may be a link to Crohn's and measles, just not Wakefield. I was able to find a different study from the National Library of Medicine that's more recent.
I was able to find? I mean, I guess I'm glad you were.
Blog posts covering Andrew Wakefield's history.
So clearly she wrote this part, right? No, she's just reading an article from the Telegraph.
He became a fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons in 1985 and a year later was awarded a Wellcome Trust traveling fellowship to study small intestine transplantation in Toronto, Canada. Dr. Wakefield returned to the UK in the late 1980s where he began to devote more time to research.
Oh no, there's more.
Joining the Royal Free Hospital in London, he worked on the liver transplant program and in 1996 began researching bowel disorders, autism, and the MMR vaccine.
And the work of several journalists who have made their own videos on a subject she was covering, including Brian Deere.
I wonder where all the other quotes come from.
And more still, nurses were leaving, saying they don't like what's being done.
Nurses were leaving and saying they didn't like what was being done to these children.
It needed 3 people to hold these kids down
in some cases just to have blood taken.
I
I feel very sorry for the children who I feel were being abused.
This study had in fact begun with a contract from a group of solicitors
Who were
that
trying to sue MMR manufacturers.
All for the same anti-vax series. He went all in, calling her lazy for not even trying to hide her plagiarism by shifting or replacing some of the words she was copying, which is especially evident in her Fire Festival documentary, where she plagiarizes almost the entire original Netflix documentary to produce her own content.
And what I realized was that they had rented an area north of Sandals Resort.
It was no isolated island, but an underdeveloped lot just north of a Sandals resort.
And then effectively photoshopped out the bottom portion of the map to make it look like they were on a deserted island.
They were photoshopping out the rest of the island to make it appear as if Fire K was a deserted island dedicated to the event. According to Marianne Roll, a local that owns an Exuma Point restaurant, they had every living soul on the island of Exuma who could lift a towel working.
They had every living soul on the island of Exuma who could lift a towel working.
It was clear that he was keeping an eye on her channel even after publishing the video, because on December 29th, 2023, he called her out on Twitter once again for including a 5-minute section of dead air in her most recent video where the voiceover just cuts out, with the tweet reading, "Illuminati's quality control standards have somehow gotten worse. In the latest video, the voiceover just cuts out for 5 minutes. You only miss something this obvious if you're completely asleep at the wheel, like a single test watch. Hell, clicking through the video just to check if it rendered correctly would catch this. The only problem was, HBomb was a little late to the party. By that point, Illuminati's life and YouTube channel were already going downhill from all of the other allegations against her, so she never found the courage to respond to his video. Her subscribers were dropping in droves, and the dislike to like ratio on her videos was growing quickly, forcing her to quickly hide the dislikes on her videos. That said, he still did take credit for Blair turning her comments off in her most recent videos, with a tweet reading, "And no one can even tell her it's happened, because the comments in all her videos have been turned off since my plagiarism video came out." While her life continued to go from bad to worse, fast forward a year later, and the damage is irreversible. Illuminati stopped uploading on her channel 8 months ago, and is completely absent from Twitter and every social media platform since then. There are rumors swirling around that she has created a secret second channel, hidden away from her previous viewers to make sure it can't be linked to her. However, the truth is simply not known, and it's highly unlikely with all the legal battles she is currently going through. That being said, at least all Illuminati lost was her YouTube channel, unlike Philip Mewson, whose blatant plagiarism got him fired from IGN's team long before HBomber laid eyes on him. If you've never been a Nintendo Switch admirer, chances are you've never heard of Philip Mewson. In yet another case of a YouTuber taking advantage of a relatively unknown genre on the platform, Philip Mewson started his YouTube career more than 2 decades ago. He would review all things related to the Nintendo Switch, including any news surrounding the platform.
What's going on, everyone? Thanks for clicking on the video, and today we're going to be talking about the Nyko Clip Grip Power for the Nintendo Switch. It's relatively easy to do something new and different, but to do something genuinely better, now that's the tricky part.
And the latest Switch accessories that are worth buying. But what eventually put him on the map was his reviews of games which came out on the Switch. Games like Skyrim.
Today we're checking out Skyrim on the Nintendo Switch in handheld mode, which is ridiculously cool because I honestly did not expect to play this game anytime soon.
And Retro City Rampage, which eventually got him hired by IGN as their Nintendo Switch editor in November of 2017. It was a sweet gig at the time when Nintendo was in its renaissance period and IGN was still at the peak of its powers as a journalist organization. If only Philip had put just a little bit more effort into his reviews, he wouldn't have been fired less than a year later, when another channel, Boomstick Gaming, called IGN out for copying his Dead Cells review.
On August 6th, 2018, his review of Dead Cells went up onto the official IGN YouTube channel. But then on August 7th, YouTuber Boomstick Gaming posted a video titled, "IGN copied my Dead Cells review."
Dead Cells takes a progression of a Metroidvania and integrates it into this procedurally generated action roguelite.
It takes the progression system of a Metroidvania and transforms it into a procedurally generated action roguelite.
This combat system is fast, fluid, responsive, and one of the most rewarding representations of 2D combat of the entire genre.
Fights are fast, fluid, responsive, and hands down one of the most gratifying representations of video game combat I've ever experienced.
The Nintendo community was both shocked and disappointed at this outcome, publicly shaming Philip for being lazy and squandering one of the biggest opportunities of his entire career, with commenters stating, "How are you so lazy to write and record a review for a 4-minute video? I mean, I can understand if some lazy-ass student did that, but on your job? Like, it's literally the job." As well as, "I could have had a shot working at Nintendo, but I got really lazy and decided to plagiarize a review of a pixel-based roguelike game, instead of actually playing the game and reviewing it. Totally worth it. Philip Mewson, presumably." Unfortunately, as HBomber pointed out, that wasn't the only instance in which Philip lazily stole someone else's review. He cited a Kotaku article that claimed there were striking similarities between Philip's review of FIFA 18 and the one posted by Chris Scullion on Nintendo Life, calling him out for being so careless in his paraphrasing that he accidentally invented a feature that wasn't even available in FIFA games until 2022.
Philip's review contains false information. For example, here when he talks about the game's Women's League feature.
FIFA 18 comes with the standard tournament and kickoff modes, as well as the Women's League, which was officially introduced in FIFA 16.
There are no women's leagues in FIFA 18. There's women's football, but leagues are specific real-life organizations that do not exist in the game.
However, despite calling him out for several other instances of plagiarism, HBomberGuy was once again a little too late to the entire controversy surrounding Philip. About 2 years too late. In that time, Philip had already posted a now deleted My Response video where he denied all of the allegations. And not one, but 2 separate apology videos. His response video came out as soon as Kotaku published their article. In this video, Philip claims there were plenty of complicated circumstances behind the making of the review.
There were a lot of circumstances surrounding it, but at the end of the day, I was the editorial lead on it, so if anything, that makes it my responsibility.
But ultimately went on to claim that he hadn't plagiarized his review at all, taking no direct responsibility for his actions, as HBomber himself points out.
Philip doesn't say, "I take responsibility for what I did with my review." He passively takes responsibility for what happened with the review. When someone tries to use language to imply what they did happened by magic, they make it pretty clear they're trying to deceive you.
He even went after Kotaku, berating them for claiming he plagiarized his FIFA 18 review as well.
So you can keep looking, Kotaku, and please let me know if you find anything. Which, by the way, their news editor, Jason Schreier, tried to imply that my FIFA 18 review was also inauthentic by claiming that I copied it from Nintendo Life, and that's just so not the case. I mean, maybe he was implying that if you have similarly opinionated reviews, then you're just plagiarizing, or maybe he's just trying to get as many clicks off of my name right now.
And it actually worked for a while, because some of his audience went after Chris Scullion, the Nintendo Life editor who originally wrote the FIFA 18 review that Philip plagiarized.
Scullion has spoken about receiving a lot of abuse from Philip's fans during this period as a direct result of Philip lying like this, another potential reason he had to make that video. If you talk about harassment without being cognizant of the harm you are causing to others right now, you clearly don't give a shit about the problem you just brought up.
But despite all his efforts, his audience slowly came to see him for what he was. And at that point, he deleted his response video and unlisted any videos that might prove his plagiarism.
On October 10th, the apology video disappeared, along with 901,000 views worth of other videos from Philip's channel. For a small YouTuber, this means a lot of videos getting privated or deleted all at once.
Most members of his audience declared his career over then and there, with a commenter stating, "I can't imagine anyone hiring him, specifically because his fame is for plagiarism. I don't know what outlet would benefit from that." However, after 8 more months of receiving hate from the gaming community and getting all his videos removed from his IGN page,
things were bad enough that IGN pulled the plug on almost everything Philip ever made for the site just to be safe.
He posted his first real apology video.
Hey everyone,
I'm not here to make any excuses or to try and justify my actions. I'm only here to apologize to the people that I've wronged.
Directly apologizing to some of the creators and organizations he had denied stealing from in his response video. But he conveniently left out all of the provocative comments he made towards those same journalists in that same video. Many construed this as an attempt to look more humble than he actually was, so he could repair his reputation and get back to earning money through YouTube, with comments reading, "Has spent 8 months trying to get work and has had no luck because of what happened. Finally realized a proper apology might allow him a foot back in the door of some small site or channel," as well as, "It's really odd to me that someone guilty of plagiarism would challenge people to find more instances of him plagiarizing. If he actually partook in plagiarism, it would not be a hard thing to prove. Google is a strong weapon in this regard." And that was made even more clear when he posted another apology video 2 weeks later. This time, he went in depth into why he did what and what he did.
I understand that there are people who want to know the reasoning behind what I did, and I might not have made that very clear in my last video, so hopefully this video will help shed some light on any unanswered questions.
Citing his insecurities about his writing and his fear of disappointing people as the major reasons for him copying more successful reviewers.
I felt pretty confident with my video editing skills and my abilities to create visually appealing content, but I wasn't always confident with my abilities as a writer. And when I got that big break with this awesome gaming company, my insecurities were amplified by like 10 million because the audience was bigger and the expectations were higher. I really wanted to do well, but I was also really scared of saying the wrong thing or putting out a bad review.
He tried to maintain his posting schedule on YouTube after, but his new videos were barely getting any views. Most of them were barely crawling past 10k, which led him to leaving YouTube altogether after posting his last video on the 24th of September 2021. Since then, he has resurfaced a couple of times, most notably on the Ask Me Anything Reddit forum, where he prompted the community to ask him questions. "My name is Philip Mewson. I'm a former IGN video games journalist that plagiarized and ruined my own career. Ask me anything." But he immediately turned back to his old ways, criticizing anyone who asked him the tough questions. What a little thief thinking you get sympathy for stealing people's ideas, articles, and essays. Funniest thing when HBomberGuy shows all of your shady tactics, how you rise and fall for plagiarism, with Mewson replying, where, baby want a bottle." Since then, he hasn't tried to integrate himself back into the YouTube or gamer community. The only social media platform he's been active consistently on is Instagram, where he posted about getting married back in 2022, and most recently about being blessed with a child. He's certainly trying to turn his life around and learn from his mistakes to become a better person, unlike Newt Wallen, who left his company high and dry, forcing them to clean up after his mess. However, to understand the story of Newt Wallen and the impact his plagiarism had, we need to talk about James Rolfe, the creator of the Angry Video Game Nerd series and the Cinemassacre channel, which has been active since April 6, 2006, a year after the birth of YouTube. According to HBomberGuy, Cinemassacre's most popular series for a number of its early years was Monster Madness, where every October, James would discuss a new monster or horror movie every single day, despite being a one-man production crew. Of course, with the passage of time, Monster Madness became a less frequent series, with James focusing on raising his family and working on some of his other bigger projects.
As the years went on and he got busy with other projects and having children, I mean, his wife had the children, you get it, Monster Madness took a back seat. Some years he only made a few new ones.
But that's when Screenwave Media entered the picture, a video production agency which helped YouTubers with things like research, writing, and editing. This was around 2017, and on paper, it was a brilliant deal. He was getting access to reputable professionals who were ready to produce one of his most beloved YouTube series, more than a decade after it first came out. But little did James know at the time, this would turn out to be one of the biggest mistakes of his channel. Not only was he forced to start taking more of a side character role in his own channel's videos,
the channel started making new types of video, which were like James standing kind of awkwardly in the corner while Screenwave employees discussed a movie.
His fan-favorite Angry Video Game Nerd series started including a ton of sponsorships that didn't really sit well with his audience.
Oh, and everything became packed with sponsorships.
If you don't know, Skillshare...
It got so bad, episode 200 of AVGN is split into 3 videos with separate sponsors, purely because they sold too many brand deals.
Oh, we're gonna have to make the episode 200 3 episodes because we sold too many brand deals and they didn't tell James.
The only saving grace was that Monster Madness was slated to return to its original glory in October 2021, with a new movie review every single day, with Cinemassacre posting a tweet reading, "We're working on Monster Madness right now. This October will be a full 31 marathon, with clips like the old days, short edits, simple, voiceover only, may the madness continue." And that's where Newt Wallen, a Screenwave employee, enters the picture. It all started with a tweet Newt Wallen made, proudly proclaiming that he was the writer behind 20 out of 31 Monster Madness videos that were due in October. Fast forward to October, and the first video of the series was released, a video review of the horror movie 28 Days Later. And as HBomber pointed out, viewers immediately felt there was something off about James' narration.
But what really stood out was what he was saying. A guy who famously avoids politics and serious real-world events in his videos suddenly started talking about how the film reminded him of the horror of 9/11?
And when seeing the film today and being put into that time period, you can't help but think of 9/11 and all those TV images of Ground Zero and Baghdad being devastated by war.
And after digging a little further, people quickly realized that a huge portion of the script had been plagiarized from a review of the movie by Film Comment.
ZB123 posted a thread on Reddit showing a huge portion of the video's script was taken directly from a review in Film Comment, a fairly well-known film criticism magazine, by Dr. Cecilia Syed.
Horror films are frequently interpreted as allegories of our realities.
Okay, that was quick.
Their fantastic or supernatural elements often spawn from symptoms of social and political tensions in a specific era. 28 Days Later is set in a post-apocalyptic Britain, which has been devastated by an epidemic that within seconds can transform its victims into crazed cannibal killers.
At first, Screenwave tried to pass off their blatant plagiarism as a quote mistake a quote new person in their team made. But for both HBomber and other eagle-eyed viewers of the channel, it wasn't difficult to spot who was actually at fault. The man who had claimed to write 20 out of the 31 scripts for the series, Newt Wallen.
We know James didn't write this, so who could it have been? Was it perhaps the man who was just bragging about writing most of them himself? Yes, it was. The rest of the Screenwave guys looked at the scripts, and many more examples were discovered. Justin confirmed several more were plagiarized, and Kieran, a video editor who later quit, claimed in a livestream that all of them were.
We went through all the scripts, plagiarized them all. They had multiple, like every single thing was plagiarized. They fucking plagiarized every single thing.
In the following days, viewers discovered that the Bad Taste review was plagiarized as well. Word for word, bar for bar. He was even caught plagiarizing his entire speech at the Roast of the Video Game Nerd event. This was only made worse when HBomber found even more evidence of him blatantly stealing jokes from famous comedians while making this video.
And just watching it without doing any serious checking, several of the jokes from this jumped out at me immediately.
Justin, I heard Justin was nervous before the show. He couldn't figure out what he was going to wear, either honey glazed or pineapple slices.
This joke is taken from a Gilbert Gottfried roast.
She couldn't decide between the honey glaze or pineapple slices.
Brent Vanderbrook is so deep in the closet, he's having adventures in Narnia.
This is a well-known joke from a 2007 Jimmy Carr stand-up special.
Come on, you're so far in the closet, you're having adventures in Narnia.
But with all the evidence stacked against him, what did actually happen to Newt Wallen? Well, he got fired almost immediately from Screenwave, and Newt did come out after HBomberGuy's video to publicly apologize to the Cinemassacre audience, posting his lengthy apology on the Cinemassacre Truth subreddit, reading, "I'm glad people are able to monetize the worst period of my life. I don't plan on ever watching this, nor any other video made about the situation or me. I lived it. I was there, man. I deal with it every effing day. I made a huge mistake." While some people did find Newt to be genuine in trying to make amends for his past actions, others continued to ridicule him, asking if he plagiarized his entire apology as well. Someone needs to cross-check this response to see if he got it from someone else. But the majority of the community declared Newt a fool guy for the man who was really at fault, James Rolfe, who was passing off other people's work as his own, with a commenter stating, "Newt clearly did something wrong, but James is a fraud who has passed off God knows how much of other people's words and ideas as his own." But it is worth mentioning that Newt also had his own YouTube channel on the side, Schlock and Awe Film, since before he started working on Cinemassacre, created back in 2019. He used this channel as a platform for his personal movie reviews, and to promote the latest short film he was acting in or producing. That said, his channel's never really taken off, and has always averaged around 5 to 7k views. From 2019 to 2020, Newt was incredibly active on this channel, posting several behind-the-scenes videos and movie reviews throughout the year. He did stop posting for a year, but this was way before his plagiarism allegations came out, and since the start of 2022, he has been pumping out videos regularly, even though his views have dropped compared to his videos that came out before 2021. It honestly feels like Newt's trying to forget the whole incident. Plus, all of the comments on his videos are mostly positive and try not to discuss the allegations, with commenters stating, "Just look after yourself, cuz," as well as, "Glad you were still kicking it, Newt. My life fell apart in 2020, and your videos have helped me feel a little less lost sometimes." It's quite possible that he's simply deleting the negative comments, but I honestly think his small, niche audience was never exposed to the plagiarism accusations in the first place. The same goes for his Twitter followers as well, who rarely reply to one of his tweets, let alone try and pick a fight with him over his plagiarism allegations. According to the man himself, he has a pretty busy schedule. He just recently moved into a new home.
Alright, hello, we are at my new apartment. I moved yesterday.
As of November this year, he has also finished filming for a new short indie project, A Medieval Pool Toy Massacre, which he both produced and acted in. Seeing this, it's pretty safe to say that he was either completely unaffected by what HBomberGuy said, or bounced back fairly quickly. After all, there doesn't seem to be any lasting damage to his career, which is something that can't be said for James Somerton, who had his entire world turned upside down after HBomber called him out. James Somerton is a gay YouTuber who started his career on the platform back in 2014. In the beginning, YouTube was little more than a hobby for him, as he mostly used his channel to geek out over the Marvel Cinematic Universe and post his unfiltered movie reviews. 3 years after the creation of his channel, he started posting long-form video essays mostly centered around queer and LGBT characters and their history in the film industry. Unsurprisingly, he found immediate success, quickly becoming recognized as a champion of gay rights among the YouTube community.
Somerton is doing great by the standards of queer YouTube in terms of views, ad revenue, sponsorships, Patreon income, and donations on his live streams. The man is doing extremely well financially in a field where people generally struggle to do this full time.
And he never looked back. Well, not until December 3rd, 2023, when HBomberGuy dedicated more than half of his video to dissect the many instances of James Somerton plagiarizing entire books, other documentaries, and articles. He also mentioned how there have been other accusations floating around about James for years, but anyone who tried to speak out was quickly silenced into submission by his fans, who saw criticism as nothing but hate speech against a beloved openly gay YouTuber.
Whenever these allegations are brought up, however, a fan of his will normally pop up to accuse them of harassing a gay man and claim this is all part of a deliberate homophobic campaign against a queer creator.
So naturally, HBomber decided to take matters into his own hands. In his first example, he showed conclusive proof that James had plagiarized almost half of his Evil Queens Disney Queer Cold War documentary from author Sean Griffin's Tinkerbells and Evil Queens book, citing multiple instances where entire chapters of the book were copied straight into the script of his video.
James opens with a present-day example of Disney being bad about gay content on their platforms, and then says we need to explore Disney's history of doing this. The next 45 minutes are almost word for word taken from Griffin's book.
Fantasy is often described as a method of escape from the trials and tribulations of everyday reality. Living in a society that has outlawed homosexual desire, categorized it as a medical disease, Shmi is constantly at Hook's side, and although Hook is the maniacal master of the relationship, Shmi is obviously his prospects brighten though when he overhears of a young man cub who is wandering alone in the jungle. He whispers to himself, "How delightful," and vows to arrange a rendezvous with the boy.
Most of this video is just James reading a book into the camera.
Another example is him stealing quotes from famous journalists and activists, though he does slightly shift around the words so he didn't have to give credit to the original author.
Somerton reuses a section of the book where Griffin quotes gay journalist and activist Jack Babushio, who passed away of AIDS in 1990. Griffin explains who he is and discusses his quote, mentioning by name repeatedly. You know, the way you quote someone and discuss what they said. Somerton removes all mention and discussion of Babushio, but he still steals everything he says.
And amping up that depiction to an 11. Camp, by focusing on the outward appearance of a role, implies that roles, and in particular gender roles, are superficial. A matter of style.
Later in the video, when James discusses how Mulan maybe unintentionally presents a queer narrative, HBomber proves how he's blatantly copying word for word from a Shondaland blog titled The Groundbreaking Queerness of Disney's Mulan.
The section on Mulan is taken from an article at Shondaland by Asian American trans person Jez Tom about how the film speaks to their experience with gender. This section is almost word for word stolen from this article.
Mulan as Ping progressively works their way toward achieving manhood, which is defined by catching fish, carrying heavy things, and of course, wielding a big stick.
HBomberGuy then moves on to another example of James openly stealing from other sources without crediting them, his video essay titled Unrequited, The History of Queerbaiting. The rest of this section is HBomber proving how James copied the words for his documentary from The Celluloid Closet, a groundbreaking documentary about the betrayal of homosexuality throughout the history of Hollywood.
The Celluloid Closet is a documentary about the portrayal of homosexuality across the history of Hollywood, with plenty of interviews with film historians, writers, directors, and actors. The structure and narrative is based on the book of the same name by Vito Russo, who passed away from complications of AIDS before the documentary could be made. The first 30 minutes of Unrequited is just the Celluloid Closet. James Illuminati'd it. He downloaded a copy of the documentary, loosely paraphrased it, and as footage for the video he uses the same clips the documentary used of the movies it talked about. He also reuses the more pivotal interviews, adding his own titles so it looks like he got them from somewhere else.
Hilariously, he even points out James' absurd mistake of misspelling the name of the very historian he's directly quoting in his video.
Quotes film historian Richard Dyer.
Your ideas about who you are don't just come from inside you, they come from the culture. And in this culture, they come especially from the movies. So we learn from the movies what it means to be a man or a woman, what it means to have sexuality. Richard Dyer, film historian.
It's actually Richard Dyer. Would you like to know how I know that?
Your ideas about who you are don't just come from inside you, they come from the culture. And in this culture, they come especially from the movies.
Once again, proving that James himself had no original thoughts on the topic other than what he's quoting from other famous personalities. HBomber's video exposing James naturally created a huge problem for him, causing him to do something that he would later regret. But before we can get into what happened in the aftermath of HBomberGuy's video, we need to take a look back how James covered up his plagiarism when he was first called out for it by folks in his community, particularly his response to the Twitter user who exposed almost his entire script as being plagiarized long before HBomber did, which HBomber covers himself, explaining how this anonymous Twitter user compared sections of James' video side by side with the Tinkerbells and Evil Queens book to highlight several copied blocks of text in James' documentary.
He did film himself next to a book, but it's not Tinkerbells, it's Disney War, a commonly cited source in videos covering Disney stuff. He's trying to look like he did research without giving away where he got all the words he's saying. Eventually, a Twitter user who noticed the similarities started comparing the works closely and wrote a thread showcasing hundreds and hundreds of words worth of examples of the video directly copying Griffin's book. She eventually asked him why he didn't credit it.
James's initial response was to acknowledge some wrongdoing on his part, promising to add a reference in the description of his video 2 months after posting it.
And he responded that he hadn't started crediting source materials yet when he made the video. He then finally added a reference to the book to the description almost 2 months after it had been uploaded. He'd gone with the internet historian method, put an acknowledgement of your theft in the description later and pretend that makes stealing okay.
But when that same Twitter user pushed a little harder, asking James to credit the real author instead of just adding a bogus reference that no one will actually see, he lashed out by blocking her and posted a now infamous tweet claiming that he, quote, always credits authors in video descriptions, despite just learning about it a day earlier, and even doubled down on confronting these, quote, accusers by creating a long YouTube community post denying all allegations of plagiarism, while adding just another footnote to the description of his Unrequited video mentioning Celluloid Closet's name.
Something like this had already happened before. James had made a video called Unrequited, The History of Queerbaiting, and this video had also been accused of stealing from a documentary called The Celluloid Closet. So this wasn't even the first time he'd been caught doing something like this. The author of the thread noticed this comment and looked at the description of the Unrequited video, and there was a note hidden towards the bottom thanking the Celluloid Closet in a familiarly vague way. Somerton had been caught stealing something before, and he tried to get away with it the same way by hiding something in the description.
And when that same Twitter user posted about comparing James' Unrequited video with the Celluloid Closet, he privated both his videos, all but proving his own guilt. As time passed, the quote haters were gradually chased off by James's fans, and the Twitter user who originally pointed out the plagiarism issue was also forced to back off when Summerton accused her of harassing him in another video titled "About Those Death Threats."
Somebody watched my Evil Queens video, my video about Disney, and realized that there are quotes in the video that are directly taken from the book Tinkerbells and the Evil Queens. They went ahead and started accusing me of plagiarism. Somebody read their thread and decided to message me some death threats, as you do on the internet. I think she has something like 154 Twitter followers, something like that, and some of the people of that 154 decided, hey, let's threaten to kill him. But yeah, that's the situation. That's why someone doxed me and threatened to kill me.
Notice how he only referred to his own blatant plagiarism as, quote, accusations of plagiarism for, quote, including quotes in my video that are directly taken from Tinkerbell's and Evil Queen's book, not realizing that's the literal definition of plagiarism. However, all his attempts to refute the truth did somehow work in the end, and the matter was laid to rest, until HBomberGuy's video exposed him all over again. This time, several of the YouTubers in his own space took notice, posting their own separate videos calling out James's lies. HBomber also called out James on Twitter for lying to his patrons about, quote, not making enough while spending, quote, absurd amounts of money on equipment he didn't need. This was the last nail in James's coffin, because he ended up deleting all of his content from YouTube, deactivating his Twitter account, and disbanding his Discord server. However, conspicuously absent from this purge of his online presence was his Patreon, where he had posted a haphazard apology moments after HBomber's video came out. Hi everyone, I wanted to say that I'm very sorry. I'm in a terrible headspace right now, so I don't want to post anything too long because I don't know where my brain will lead me. I'm heartbroken that I've lost your trust and just hope that someday, with a lot of work, I can get it back. But it wasn't long before the backlash reached his Patreon as well, and he had to close it too. Later, on the 21st of December 2023, James posted a now-deleted apology to his barren YouTube channel, detailing all that happened to him after HBomberGuy's video. He opened the video by saying that he'd been in hospital for a week for trying to take his own life.
Hi everyone. I'm sorry for taking so long to make this video or to say anything. I'm in the hospital. I've been in the hospital for a little over a week.
However, he never once addressed the plagiarism allegations head-on, or acknowledged that he'd plagiarized almost all of his content, repeatedly using the word adapted instead of plagiarized.
When it was something like the recent history of Hollywood videos, right there in the opening credits, I put Vito Russo's name, that it was adapted from his book, The Celluloid Closet. Same thing went for the Gay Panic video and the Gay Holocaust video. The Gay Holocaust video was adapted from 2 books, and the Gay Panic video was adapted from a lot of journalism. And I put their names right at the beginning.
Most of the video was just incoherent ramblings about how bad his life had become, including how his best friend and co-writing partner, Nick, had left him.
I lost my best friend because of this. Nick and I had been best friends since 2011 or 12. We'd been friends online, and then he lived in Ottawa, and I moved to Ottawa.
Until he started hinting at the entire thing being Nick's fault, and subtly claimed that his only fault was not doing his due diligence.
Misinformation and lies. I promise you I did not write that stuff. I should have been a lot more exacting when Nick and I would be editing scripts, but I promise you that those are not, I don't think those things.
As expected, most of the community didn't buy his attempt to garner sympathy for himself, causing James to delete the video just a few hours after posting it. But before deleting the video, he said he was going to reactivate his Patreon so that members could unsubscribe. However, most saw it as a way to earn some extra cash from people who are subscribed to the Patreon but weren't aware of the ongoing situation. With a tweet from Lady Emily reading, "And true to his word, his Patreon is back up, scrubbed of all but but 2 posts and 3,000 patrons are still there, with tiers as large as $100 per month with annual options. If you're a patron of James, make sure you unsubscribe before the end of the month so he doesn't get your money. This led to even more backlash, forcing him to shut down his Patreon once again just a few hours later. By this point, everything James had built over the years was crumbling before his eyes. Even mainstream media picked up the story, crediting HBomberGuy for exposing James for producing plagiarized content and spreading misinformation. On top of that, writers who Summerton had previously plagiarized started claiming that they were receiving emails from him directly, offering to make amends for stealing their work. But as one of these writers pointed out, he was only interested in compensating them through exposure, which is every artist's worst nightmare. However, James's campaign of trying to make his audience feel sorry for him wouldn't end there. On the 26th of February 2024, James posted yet another apology video, but this time he looked a lot more composed. He once again went on to apologize for not crediting authors properly and for disappointing the queer community as one of its representatives.
Early on, I thought crediting authors in the opening credits alone was enough, especially since the videos weren't monetized early on. But I understand now, especially after speaking with some of the people who I did plagiarize.
However, this new apology video was also plagued by the same problems. James was trying to get sympathy from HBomberGuy and the larger YouTube community by discussing the passing of his mother and how he was struggling financially because of problems with her life insurance.
I had to deal with all the legal stuff after my mom died, as well as making sure that all my dad's bills were paid and whatnot, especially after his income was basically cut in half. There was supposed to be a buffer here, money-wise, as my mom had a life insurance policy that was going to be split between my dad and myself. But the insurance company, RBC Insurance, so if you have insurance with them, maybe rethink that, refused to pay out the policy because my mother never mentioned that she had family with diabetes.
The only good things that come out of this video was James pledged to unprivate some of his videos. He promised to send all ad revenue generated by them to HBomberGuy's team so they could distribute it to the parties that had been affected. Unfortunately, HBomberGuy later revealed that he hadn't received any of the ad revenue James promised, further proving how hollow James's words had become. And after facing severe backlash yet again, he took down this new apology video as well. Now, you'd think that this would be the end of James's story. However, there was yet another twist in this tale. On the 5th of March 2023, a post appeared on James Summerton's private Twitter account, which read as his final goodbyes to the world. He talked about, quote, "there being simply no life left for me anymore," which was all deeply concerning. No matter how much the community might have berated James for spreading misinformation or plagiarizing from other creators, no one wanted to see it come to this. In what everyone thought were his final words to the world, he mentioned how he has scheduled 3 or 4 videos to be released after his death. The ad revenue of those videos was going to be given to the Canadian Association for Prevention. At the end, he acknowledged that the entire plagiarism debacle was his own fault, and that it had cost him everyone who was important to him. As expected, this caused a stir in the YouTube community, with many blaming HBomberGuy for pushing James to the edge, while others stood up to defend him, stating James's actions were his own and he himself was responsible for the consequences he faced. But as the days passed, the confusion among the community increased, since there had been no word from his family members or any news organizations confirming or denying James's death. This naturally prompted people to ask anyone close to him about his whereabouts. When someone inquired Nick, his former friend and co-writer, about the situation, he replied, "I'm aware of the tweet and the situation, and to my knowledge, there's nothing to worry about." This obviously led to even more speculation over the next few months. However, on May 8th, 2024, it was finally revealed that James did indeed fake his death, when a Twitter user, Lady Emily, posted about how James had continued to post on Twitter since that day, though on a rebranded alt account that he thought no one would recognize. She went into detail to explain James's deception, mentioning how he started this alt account the same day as his first apology video, and how he continued to assume fake identities to keep the fact that he was alive a secret. This caused quite an eruption in the community. After all, many of his long-term fans were genuinely sad about his potential passing, despite the whole controversy. But this was it. There was no one left to sympathize with James, regardless of what he said or did after this, thus marking the end of his online career completely. Ultimately, James was many things, a liar and a manipulator, but at least he eventually admitted to the plagiarism, unlike Internet Historian, who took every step to hide his actions. Internet Historian first rose to popularity on YouTube for his comedic deep dives into dramatic events events, like the disastrous Fire Festival, or even the entire Shia LaBeouf He'll Not Divide Us saga. His unique editing and weird Photoshop animations made him stand out in the sea of video essays on YouTube, resulting in his 2 channels gaining over 700 million views in total. More than views, however, was his impeccable reputation as the funny good guy of YouTube. However, this status was called into question in December of 2023, when he got on the radar of HBomberGuy. You see, in September of 2022, internet historian uploaded one of his most popular videos to date, simply titled Man in Cave. This hour and 14-minute long video told the story of William Floyd Collins, a cave explorer who got stuck in 1925 and became national news due to the extensive rescue efforts. At the time of its release, the video was seen as absolutely brilliant. People were especially impressed by its compelling writing, but after a couple of months of praise on the internet and over 10 million views, the video vanished from YouTube. There was some talk about copyright claims, but no one was 100% sure about the reason for its deletion. That is until HBomberGuy decided to air the dirty laundry in his plagiarism video.
The video is an hour and 10 minutes long and pretty detailed, covering the events hour by hour as they happen. What a unique way of telling the story. But then in March of this year, the video disappeared. Any links to the video took you to a blank page saying it was unavailable because of a copyright claim. Usually with really popular videos though, YouTube resolves this quickly to avoid negative attention, but this was down for a while, and then it stayed down. What's going on here? This video is no longer available due to a claim by Pro Sportority Limited doing business as Minute Media. So did he use some of their copyrighted images or the YouTube channel's footage? Well, it doesn't look like the channel has ever covered Floyd Collins. The Mental Floss website, however, has. In 2018, Lucas Riley wrote a story about the 1925 cave rescue that captivated the nation. This article is an extremely detailed summary of the story of Floyd Collins. Uh-oh. In fact, it makes the unique choice of covering the events hour by hour. Oh, he didn't. He did not just—
Floyd tried to breathe calmly. His left arm was pinned underneath his torso, his right wedged by the rock ceiling above. Beneath him, sharp crystal shards dug into his skin.
Well, as it turns out, the internet historian's video was almost entirely stolen from an existing article. So, Pro Sportority, the company representing the original writer, Lucas Riley, rightfully copyrighted the video. And as HBomber points out in his video, internet historian's initial response to the copyright claim was pretty sus on its own.
When someone from Mental Floss noticed the plagiarism and filed a copyright claim, internet historian tweeted about the video's disappearance, but in a kinda suspicious way. Most YouTubers in this situation would fight a copyright claim publicly, arguing their case where everyone could see it, which would force YouTube to take notice and do something about it. Internet historian can't start a public case about this because he is in the wrong. He stole an article for money, and bringing attention to it would just broadcast to his audience he did 70 minutes of plagiarism. Right now, not many people know about this.
What makes this even worse is that despite the blatant theft, internet historians somehow managed to mix up his facts.
Collins discovered a beautiful cave full of stalagmites on his family's land, which he named Crystal Cave. They tried to turn it into a tourist attraction, but this didn't pan out. He then tried looking for a new cave on his neighbor's property, and this is the cave he got trapped in while clearing out. Internet historian treats them like the same one cave and calls it Sand Cave. So now the story has insane shit, like Floyd advertising Sand Cave to tourists, which literally never happened because he died in it before it could open for business. That's what the story is about! This isn't nitpicking. Okay, it is. But this is the cave in Man in Cave. It would be nice if he got the cave right.
After the original copyright claim, historian re-uploaded the video with a new voiceover in many sections. But this was only a half-assed attempt to claim originality by reshuffling the words, which only made the video worse.
He just changed the words more than last time.
Beneath him, sharp crystal shards dug into his skin.
He can feel the sharp crystals on the ground poking into his back.
Floyd tried to breathe calmly. Floyd took slow, steady breaths.
So he removes his suit, drapes himself in coveralls, and grabs a lamp. Miller thinks for a moment, then says, "Yeah, all right." He grabs a lantern,
with a commenter stating, "Damn, I remember being impressed with the extensive research when I watched this upon release. Feels pretty crummy now." The re-uploaded version also credits the original author in the description, which is better than nothing, but still doesn't make the previous blatant plagiarism any better. However, what makes the internet historian case different from all of the other ones we've covered so far is the aftermath. Put simply, the HBomber expose had little to no effect on internet historian's career. Well, he technically lost around 50,000 subs when HBomber's video came out, but that's merely a blip to a channel with nearly 4 million subscribers. And while historian didn't make a response to HBomber himself, his most loyal fans had plenty to say, like this one person on Twitter who labeled HBomberGuy as quote vindictive for talking about internet historian's plagiarism in his video about plagiarism, reading, "You can also tell how vindictive HB is by the way he went after internet historian, bringing up a case where internet historian corrected his mistake and made amends, and also dragging him for past videos. But yeah, Hassan stealing content is fine because he has your politics. At the end of the day, it is completely fine to take inspiration from others' work. That is how art works and has worked for thousands of years. But as HBomberGuy demonstrated in his video, there is a fine line between being inspired and outright stealing someone else's creation. And after seeing how the internet abandoned most of the YouTubers that HBomber exposed in his video, it's clear that the internet as a whole has zero respect for those who plagiarize from others, regardless of what mental gymnastics they pull off in order to attempt to justify their blatant theft.